Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donna Hagigat, and I am the CEO of the Women's Fund, and we're so glad so many of you have come out to hear about our latest research. Before we get started hearing about the research, it's my pleasure to bring up Pam Staberski, who is the board president of Greenfield Savings Bank. Without their generosity, we wouldn't be hosted here at GCC and have these wonderful refreshments. As a fundraising foundation, it's quite important for funders and individuals to support our work, and so we're very grateful to Greenfield Savings Bank. Pam?
Thank you, Donna. Appreciate those comments. As I was thinking about opening remarks today, I paused and I said, you know, the impactful collective power of women in this region of the state is amazing. I knew Sally Livingston, who was a founding member of the Women's Fund back in the early 90s. I was a young lawyer practicing in Greenfield, and she said, please come to dinner. I want to talk to you about something. And I said, sure. And at that point, she and a number of women had just come back in Beijing. They'd gone to the UN conference for women, and they were just filled with such excitement about what they could do here in Western Massachusetts. You know, oftentimes we're sort of the forgotten part of the state, but they created something that is so powerful today. So incorporated in 1997, fast forward now, the Women's Fund has provided support of $2.5 million since 1997 to over 150 nonprofit organizations in our region. It's just a phenomenal testament to Donna and others who have come before her, as well as other people sitting in this room. This morning, I took a look again at the gender equity report that's going to be presented today, and I was so excited to see that changes are happening for the better. And it is disclosed in this report some of the areas in which advancements have been made. One of the things I thought was quite striking in this report is they take data and they divide it into three categories: meaningful data, accessible data, and actionable data. And the meaningful data is the storytelling, the examples of how someone has truly been helped, and expressing that to other people. Because if you can't tell the stories, you can't raise the money, and it becomes a little bit more difficult to keep your organization going. The accessible data clearly is the critical data for grant writing, which helps sustain the Women's Fund now and for the years to come. And then the actionable data, which the Women's Fund weaves into their strategic plan to make sure that they're creating meaningful change for women in Western Massachusetts. I'm the board chair, and I know Greenfield Savings Bank is just so proud to be a sponsor of this event. Greenfield Savings is a mutual, $1 billion bank, and what mutuality means is that we're not owned by stockholders, we're owned by the depositors, which means that we can pour back into the community a lot of money, much like the Women's Fund, to help organizations in this area. I'm proud to say that 50% of our board are women. When I first went on the board in 2008, that wasn't the case. Our mantra is care, connect, community, and communication. And similar to the Women's Fund, I think it's sort of a guiding force for both the Women's Fund and Greenfield Savings Bank. I truly believe that both organizations lead with purpose and make our community a much better place to live and work. So I'm excited to hear more about the data, and thank you.
So we really have mutuality in common. I love that. It's my pleasure now to actually recognize Pat Healy, who's busy filming this event, our last of our research report events. And we'll be able to have that online sometime soon so that you can share it with those who couldn't make it, watch it again. and we'll be sure to share it out as well. So thank you to Pat and to Frontline Productions who are donating their time to have this video made. So thank you. Part of what the Women's Fund does is empower other women to be leaders, and so it's my pleasure to take a smaller speaking role tonight and to have some of our amazing team members do more of the presentation. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Amihan Matias from our team. She's our Senior Director of Community Partnerships, to share more about a special treat and then more about the Women's Fund.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Donna. And I'm going to take the opportunity to sneak in a little bit of gratitude to our fearless leader, Donna Higigat, who is an inspirational and visionary leader and who really believes in a style of inclusive, collaborative, and shared leadership. So thank you, Donna. As Donna mentioned, my name is Amihan Matias, and I'm the Senior Director of Community Partnerships at the Women's Fund. And later on, you'll be hearing from Sarah Munson, who is our fabulous Senior Director of Philanthropy. So I want to start off by thanking you all for being here, and for thanking you all for caring about our women, girls, and gender diverse people, as well as your interest in learning more about how to support them to get what they need so that they can thrive. And we thought a really wonderful way to start off the presentation was by doing a form of storytelling that Pam referenced. So we have a special treat this afternoon. Marcia Gomes, who is an amazing and talented singer-songwriter, will be sharing an original song that really brings to vivid life the experiences and the challenges and the issues that single women who are dealing with poverty, violence, and other social issues, what it's like. So I'm going to invite Marcia up to sing her song so that you get a felt sense of what some of the lives of the women that we are supporting and serving. So with that, Marcia, come on up.
So thank you, Amihan, and thank you, the Women's Fund, for giving me an opportunity to share a brand new piece from a musical that I'm writing to honor the sacrifices and the love of single-parent moms who are heroes. And I am the oldest daughter of a single-parent mom, and in my family I have younger sisters who are single-parent moms. And if we go back 4 generations, we have many prayers and sacrifices and lots of hard work and sleepless nights that go unnoticed and can be invisible and deserve to be honored. Being a single-parent mom and dealing with poverty and sometimes recovering from abuse, domestic violence, is a dance that is elegant. And I'm so grateful that so many women in my family have made sacrifices so I can be here today. And I think the least they deserve is a song to put their story and their sacrifice and their love in an honorable place that we can give love back to them, and time that they never have. No time for themselves at all. So this song is called Gotta Go. Like you gotta go to the bathroom, but if you're a single parent mom, you don't have time for that either. Everybody has woes, I have mine. I can tell my story, but I don't have time. Gotta go, 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 gotta go. I'm a single parent mom with 3 kids to feed, working 3 hard jobs to make ends meet. We're a family of 4, just the way it is, the invisible poor, forced to beg for more. Slum landlords don't care about your rights. Take your money, no heat, sleep well at night. If it were just me, I could walk away, but my kids need a home, so we have to stay. Need 15 minutes, but I only got 10. It's a hard journey from where I've been. Everybody has walls, I got mine. I can tell my story, but I don't have time. Gotta go, 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 gotta go. I'm a single parent mom with 3 kids to feed. They're strong and smart, got special needs. Asthma, allergies, gluten-free, nut-free, dairy-free, not free, PTSD. 3 paychecks don't go very far. Can't pay the bills, can't afford a car. Boyfriend drinks all the money away, hits me when he's high. Average day, 6 stitches in my head, ER. Losing money by the hour. Call in sick again, can't afford to get fired. Yes, I feel safe at home, I'm just clumsy and tired. Dear God, please hear my prayer, lift me higher. Help me, please. Every time I stand up, life beats me right back down. Can't hardly catch my breath, feels like I'm gonna drown. My kids deserve better than this, but I fear I'm losing ground. Dear God, please hear my prayer, help me turn my life around. Need 15 minutes, but I only got 10. It's a long, hard journey from where I've been. Everybody has woes, I got mine. I can tell my story, but I don't have time. Gotta go, 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 gotta go. I need 15 minutes, but I only got 10. It's a long, hard journey from where I've been. Everybody has woes and I have mine. I could tell you my story, but I don't have time. Gotta go, 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 gotta go. Mommy, will you play with me? I'm sorry, baby, mommy's tired. Please, mommy, will you play with me? I'm sorry, baby. Mommy has to get ready for work, has to get you ready for school, has to make dinner, has to go shopping, has to, oh my goodness, mommy's tired. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so tired. Mommy's tired. Mommy's tired. I need 15 minutes, only got 10.
So powerful and moving, and I think she captures in this really beautiful way what the experiences are like of some of the women that we are looking to support and empower and offer responsiveness to their needs and advance their rights. So thank you, Marcia, for really opening up the evening by giving us a sense of why we're here. So I want to talk a little bit about why we're here. And I think that the reason that we're gathered together is to understand in a deeper and more broad way the multiple challenges and the complex obstacles that prevent women and girls and gender diverse folks, especially our most marginalized women of color and gender diverse people of color, from thriving. And we want to share this research with you so that we can all work collectively to address these issues and create different outcomes in their lives. So we at the Women's Fund, we partner with community researchers because we understand the power that data and numbers have as ways and tools for creating change. And we want to use it to advocate and create policy that will improve the lives of women, girls, and gender diverse folks. And we hope that you'll use this information in that way too. So I essentially want to emphasize that this data belongs to you. It belongs to the community, and it has no meaning unless we use it to guide our work. And we're all needed, each and every one of us. So we hope that those of you who are in the room, who are community leaders, heads of nonprofits, elected officials, funders, concerned citizens, and community members will take action as a result of this research and use your privilege and your power and your influence to make a difference in the lives of our women, girls, and gender expansive folks. So I just want to emphasize again that this data belongs to you, and it's our collective responsibility to act and not turn away from the findings, but actually to lean in and use it as a motivator to create change. So I'm going to take a moment now to tell you a little bit more about the Women's Fund. I've been there now for about 4 months, along with my other colleague, Sarah, who's been there a little under 4 months, and I'm really loving the organization, the work, and the mission. It's great to be a part of it. So to tell you about the mission of the Women's Fund, we fuel progress towards gender equity by funding the most promising solutions, collaborating with results-oriented partners, and by elevating the collective power of local women to take charge and to lead with purpose. And our vision is that we in Western Mass become a national leader for gender equity, where people in our communities have the power to prosper economically, live safe and healthy lives, and thrive. And the lens through which we do all of our work is by really focusing on using informed research and to connect to those closest to the problem, and with the lens of equity, racial, and gender justice, and the full gender spectrum. So we're always asking, who's here, who's not here, and are we really taking the time to listen deeply and to hear the stories of people in the community? So these are our strategic pillars and actions, and these are our focus areas and our priority areas for our work. And the first one is parity in positions of power and leadership. And essentially what we hope to do is to create an increase in female representation in all powers of position and leadership across Western Massachusetts. So we're going to be subversive and do everything we can to make sure that we are supporting that leadership. The other pillar is economic security. So a lot of women, girls, gender diverse folks in our community are living in poverty. So our hope is to really find ways to work with the community to reduce poverty and to decrease the pay gap for all marginalized people. Another important pillar of ours is freedom from violence, harassment, and abuse. So we want to make sure that we're promoting safety and freedom from gender-based violence, abusive relationships, and to allow women to have autonomy over their lives and their bodies. And some of the ways that we support this work is by supporting the organizations and the people that are doing the work, the nonprofits that are out there. So we're supporting nonprofits that are advancing the rights and responding to the needs of women, girls, and gender diverse people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work that we do in each of those pillars. And there's a great program that we oversee. We partner with organizations in the community to offer a Young Women's Initiative, which is a leadership, social justice, and economic empowerment program for young women and gender diverse young people ages 16 to 24 in the greater Springfield and Franklin County. We just are starting a program here in Franklin County. So Heather Wood, who's in the back of the room, is the executive director of MCSM, and they are going to be the ones who are launching the program here in Western Mass. So the thing that's so great about this program, and I tell people this all the time, it's one of the main draws for me to working with the Women's Fund, is that it allows these young women and gender diverse people to learn how to become powerful and engaged leaders, and to give them a platform for doing some great research, learning about the issues that impact them and their communities, and figuring out what are people doing to address these issues that are impacting us, and how can we support the work. So we allow them, encourage them to be philanthropists. We give them a pool of money, $25,000, and we encourage them to think about who's doing the work that they care about, who's making a difference, and how can you support the work by offering them a grant. And they are able to give grants in the range of $25,000 to $10,000 to local nonprofits. And so we're training them to step into this role where they are realizing that they can make a real impact. So we're training future activists, future leaders and change makers, which I think is incredibly exciting. Another exciting project that we're working on is a Race and Gender Justice and Movement Building Institute. So we've partnered with the Boston Women's Fund and the Commonwealth Seminar, whose mission is to open the doors of government to everybody. And our goal is to really support Black, Indigenous, and women of color, and gender diverse Black, Indigenous, and people of color to become our region's community builders, organizers, social justice champions, movement builders, policymakers, and elected officials. So this is our other way of installing leaders into our communities. And the program's now in its development stage, but it will be launched in 2024. We've also been working on an equity succession planning program and series. So essentially, we want to take advantage of the opportunity when there are leadership transitions to make sure that women of color, and gender diverse folks are positioned to be able to step into those leadership positions. So we'll be changing the face of nonprofit leaders in the area to be more reflective of the people that they're serving. So we had 14 organizations participate in a set of workshops, and there will be ongoing facilitated resource learning and implementation groups where people can really be actively thinking about how do we cultivate this internal leadership of our young leaders, women leaders, leaders of color. And in the area of economic security, we have offered some research. We've partnered with UMass Center for Research on Families to collect data on women's economic security in the greater Springfield area of Massachusetts. And so they collected and analyzed data on 200 women who have been experiencing economic security in that area, so that we can more deeply understand the complex and multiple factors that affect women's economic security. The cool thing about this project is that they trained providers within nonprofits to be the researchers so that they could be the ones talking to people in the community. They had already established trusting relationships with them, so then the women in the community felt more comfortable to be able to talk to them and really share what was going on in their lives. So some of the findings from that research showed that the median income in the greater Springfield area for women is $15,000. I don't know who can live on that amount of money. And that 83% of participants had an annual household income below 200% of the poverty line. And as you can imagine, the issues that they're grappling with include lack of adequate housing, jobs, food, transportation, childcare. So those were primary concerns, and they're not surprising. The other thing that we do in the area of providing safety from gender-based violence is that we pull together convenings of domestic violence and sexual abuse providers on a quarterly basis. And so we've been able to assemble 50 providers from 30 organizations in Western Mass alone. And it's been a great opportunity for resource sharing and information. A lot of these organizations are feeling overwhelmed with the issues, and so the thought partnership and the problem solving that happens when these providers come together is really invaluable. And Jane Doe also participates in their statewide coalition, and so they're bringing to bear their resources, their information, and also their focus on advocacy in the conversations that we have at these convenings. And then finally, one of the major pieces of work that we do to support women and girls, gender diverse folks in the community and the organizations that serve them is by doing grant making, community investments for social impact. And as Pam had said earlier, since 1997, the Women's Fund has awarded over $2.5 million to more than 150 nonprofit organizations in Western Mass. And in fiscal year 23 alone, we were able to give out grants in the amount of $323,000 to all 4 counties in Western Massachusetts. So I say that we've been doing some great work out there. And now I'm going to be turning it over to Lisa Rangeli, who's from the Public Health Institute of Western Mass, and she's actually going to be the one sharing the findings with you. And I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I always like to bring my cheat sheets up just in case somebody asks a question that's not on the PowerPoint. So thank you all for being here this afternoon. Thank you so much to the Women's Fund for giving me this opportunity and my organization this opportunity. Thank you so much, Marcia, for that amazing way to set the tone. And let me just advance the slide. So we talk about wanting to make sure that folks, we're talking about real people. We're not just talking about statistics and numbers. And it's easy to get lost in the data and the bar charts. And so I always like to start out by just reminding myself and all of us that we're talking about real people's lives. And I feel like your beautiful song just kind of drove that point home. So thank you. My colleague Leela Ramachandran is participating in another event this evening, but she very much was my co-pilot and co-author in this, co-researcher in this process, so just want to acknowledge her. Also, Kelly Bryant, who's still on maternity leave with her adorable little baby girl, was really the person who shepherded this process from the Women's Fund through most of the time that we were doing this research. So also want to acknowledge her. And then briefly, some folks here in the room who have been part of the Women's Fund in the past and who have been very influential for me, including Lee Ray, who was my co-board chair, so I'm also on the board of the Women's Fund, and Carla, who when I first went on the grants committee was the head of the organization, and Liz, who has just been really important resource for me also through the grant making work that we've done in the past. So thank you all, and I'm sure I should be thanking other people as well. So that's some context setting. So we have this quote here at the beginning because, well, for one thing, we try to really bring in quotes and stories and lived experience throughout the report, especially the full report. There's a full report, which is quite lengthy, and then there's a really nice summary. I'd be thrilled if you read the summary. I would be, amazed if you read the full report. But you might at least flip through the full report to see some of those quotes that we brought into it. And also because I feel like this quote really speaks to what the mission of the Women's Fund and what the purpose of this research is all about, which is all the women and gender diverse and trans folks who have been at the margins and who have been under-resourced and discounted and marginalized, and that they really should be at the forefront, at the center of leading in our communities, of driving change, of strengthening families, and that's what we're all trying to accomplish. So I think that quote really speaks to that issue. Why does this report matter? Well, I was just saying why I thought it matters, but to put it more in the language of action. So this report is attempting to lift up the intersections of gender, racial, and other inequities. It looks at trends throughout our region, and of course, especially during, and we say after COVID, but the pandemic has become endemic, and it's still very much with us, and the effects of it are very much with us. And we do hope that this report will be used to drive action at all levels of government, especially here in the 4 counties of Western Mass. So we hope that as you hear the findings, you'll think about what your circles of influence are and how you can get this research into the hands of folks who will be able to use it. So we strove to have an inclusive process with this research, inclusive in terms of the subject of the research. So this is the 3rd report that the Women's Fund has commissioned. The first one looked at the status of women in the 4 counties. The second one looked at women and girls. And now this 3rd report is looking at women, girls, and transgender folks, meaning folks who may identify as, have gone from identifying as male to female or female to male in a very inclusive definition of trans and gender diverse. We also had a research advisory group that we consulted with, and that grounded us in important values about how we should approach this work. And Rhonda Anderson from Ocotillo Cultural Center, who's also Western Mass Commissioner on Indian Affairs, or I forget the exact title, was on the committee, as well as Nafisa from Community Action Pioneer Valley. So I apologize that I don't have that information at my fingertips. So we were very grateful to that committee, and there were other folks who serve in Franklin County, but maybe aren't based in Franklin County, who are on that committee. And then we decided to do a deeper dive on some communities that we felt don't really show up that well in the quantitative data. So for example, Indigenous women and girls, folks who have been incarcerated, and low-income women in Springfield, which we had a lot of data from the Economic Security Hub that we could include, and also victims and survivors of domestic violence. So just a few data considerations. A lot of data is presented as gender or sex binary, meaning male or female, and we don't know to what extent folks who identify as trans or gender diverse might check those boxes. So sometimes people ask us that question. We just don't know the answer. We collect data from many different sources and in many different ways. And we strive to have data that's as local as possible, as credible as possible, that can be disaggregated to the extent possible, especially by race, ethnicity, obviously by sex and gender. But for different categories or topics, we may or may not have access to the perfect data. It may not be as local as we would like. We may not be able to dissect it as much as we would like. So we make do with the best data that we can to tell the story in the region. Also, we just want to acknowledge, because we kind of, in the research world, we take it as a given that we are going to look at race data, because the reality is that we live in a society that has embedded structural and systemic racism, and so we need to look at race data as a way to understand those disparities and those inequities, yet race is socially constructed, and so we just want to name that so that we are understanding, why we make these choices, not that we want to perpetuate the idea that race is a category that's other than socially constructed. So I will get to the data shortly, but just to provide some context, obviously the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the data that we look at. Some of the data may be, in a sense, an aberration, or a trend line might be disrupted because of COVID-19, and we may yet be seeing how that trend line may change over time. Roe v. Wade was overturned at the federal level by the Supreme Court. We are seeing more female leadership, especially BIPOC leadership at state and national levels. There's been a national reckoning with police brutality, racism, and the rise of white nationalist movements. And Massachusetts experiences white nationalism. The growth in Massachusetts has been one of the highest in the country of white supremacy activism. And then we've seen attacks on transgender rights at all levels of government, and we are a progressive state, but we do have in our own backyard examples. And one came up recently in the Amherst school systems. So like to put into context what's going on in the world when we look at these data sources. All right, so now we're going to get to the findings. So the first sentence of the report, the executive summary says, the extensive data synthesized in this report tell a story of both positive change and ongoing injustice. So I put that quote there because, as Pam said, there is a lot of good news, and we're glad to be able to share the good news, and there's also a lot that still needs to be done. A lot of inequities and hurt that women and girls and trans folks in our communities are experiencing. So briefly, looking at demographics, Hampden County is the most racially diverse county in terms of female population. It also has the most women and girls in that particular county. Franklin County is the least racially diverse. It's 88% white still, but it is becoming more diverse over time, followed by Berkshire County, which is 84% white. The county overall is aging, and Franklin and Berkshire are kind of going toe-to-toe to see who's got the oldest median age and aging most rapidly. But I think it's important to note that close to 1 in 4 women in Franklin County are 65 and older. So that has implications for policy and for how we're helping folks age in the community. The region's female population continues to become more racially and ethnically diverse than previously, and we especially see growth of Latino women and girls across the region. They now comprise 4% of females in Franklin County. 4% of females in Franklin County are foreign-born in 2021, which is the lowest in the region. And then 17% of females have a disability in Franklin County, which is higher than the region and state levels. And 29% of household heads are single women in Franklin County, and that's comparable to the region. I wanted to acknowledge that the data we do provide in the report from the census on Indigenous women and girls, that we've been told by Indigenous leaders that these are woeful undercounts of the actual numbers. And we also only have statewide data on transgender populations, youth and adults, and the youth population in particular is growing over time. And we see similar racial ethnic breakdowns, with 16% of those who identify as trans adults being Latine. So we have a number of different topics that the Women's Fund consistently reports on, and so we hewed to those topics in doing this study. And the first looks at employment and earnings. So you'll see these partial dollar bills. They reflect the amount that women make relative to a man's dollar. So Franklin County, which is the second bar over, is 87 cents on the dollar. Over time, the wage gap is narrowing, but as you can see, we still have a wage gap, and it is widest among Latina, Indigenous, and Black women. And then national data shows that LGBTQ communities and trans communities in particular face huge wage gaps relative to men and women. So we also look at median earnings by race and ethnicity, and for some reason in Franklin County there's no data for Black female earnings, which would be a brown bar, and it's they suppress the data on that. But we do see a disparity between Latina and white. So the yellow bar is Latino women only making about $45,000, close to $45,500, and white women making $52,750. And regionally, across the region, we still see those gaps, and we see those gaps at the state level as well. So service providers that we interviewed and key informant interviews and focus groups that we did really helped us understand what women are experiencing as they try to increase their employment and earnings. And we really heard from domestic violence service providers in particular that the lack of safe, affordable housing often prevent women from finding stability away from their abusers. And so these quotes kind of speak to this issue. There are so many survivors that are just stuck and can't get out because of economic issues. And then this theme over and over of kind of the punitive and unresponsive nature of a lot of the programs and services that, and systems, including the legal systems that women have to deal with. And this quote actually came from an indigenous leader who's trying to help indigenous women access training to get better paying jobs. There's also this issue of a lot of these job training programs, they have this approach to education that's like not even sometimes 3 strikes you're out, and it's not helpful. They're not designing these programs in a way that is supportive of family and of women. This box here is meant to kind of jog your thoughts about or ideas about policy solutions. In the full report, we decided to look retrospectively and provide a summary of key policies that have passed over the last 3 years related to each issue. But in the shorter key findings, we actually talk about possible policy solutions. And we purposely kept them a little bit general because we didn't want to attach bill numbers and things that would kind of date the suggestions. So the cliff effect, which is that sort of problem where you lose supportive services, you lose, public assistance supports as your income goes up. And that's trying to be addressed at the pilot level in Springfield. Wage theft is a huge issue for immigrant women workers. Obviously, we still need wage parity, and then reducing other employment barriers. So obviously, the flip side of employment and earnings is poverty. And in Franklin County, we do have data for several racial ethnic groups, and so we still see huge disparities. In this case, more than 1 in 4 Black females live in poverty, and 25%, so 1 in 4 Asian female residents live in poverty in Franklin County, which is interesting. And 20% of female-headed households live in poverty, so 1 in 5 in Franklin County. We know from statewide data that transgender poverty rates are higher than for the overall population, but we don't have local data for that group. The Women's Fund also, in looking at poverty and opportunity, looks at educational attainment and also female leadership in the schools. And so we know that Hampden County, unfortunately, has the lowest completion rates for college or partial completion rates. Franklin County, 71% of women over 25 have at least some college, and 43% have a BA or higher. And Franklin County is doing pretty well compared to the region in female school superintendents. So 58% of superintendents are female compared to 48% regionally. And then the proportion of female principals is comparable to the region. 63% of principals are female. So in addition to addressing the cliff effect and other wage-enhancing strategies, obviously affordable housing is a huge issue. Continuing to promote and not cut SNAP and HIP funding, transportation, and then educational access are all still important. And we especially heard about the needs of formerly incarcerated women and the hard time that they have accessing educational and employment opportunities, and even told stories about how these opportunities are mediated through the jail staff, and the jail staff, many of whom are male, will say, oh, well, they don't want to do this kind of work. They don't want to get these, training opportunities that are like male-identified fields, but they don't really know if, in fact, that's what the women want. So now I'm going to talk about various measures of health and well-being, and there's a lot more in the report. We can't nearly touch on all of it. When we look at youth data, we try to present data from a lot of different sources, and each county and school district has different ways that they slice and dice the data. So I'm going to present a little bit of the regional information. This is from the COVID Community Impact Survey from 2020, but then I'm going to present a little more recent data for Franklin County and the Communities That Care Coalition, which is represented here by Kat, has hot off the presses, brand new data, and so I tried to weave in a little bit of that as well, which is not in the main report. And it reflects ongoing trends, but there's a little bit of nuance in there around social media and other things that is really helpful. So I encourage people to look at the Communities That Care work. So what we see is that depressive symptoms are on the rise, and especially among girls and young women, and that those with a disability and who are LGBTQ+, have much higher rates of reported depressive symptoms. And then when we look at actual Franklin County data, so the report has the 2022 data, and then this data on the right I pulled out of the data that Communities That Care provided. And what we see, and when we look at substance use, is that girls are reporting higher rates of substance use, particularly alcohol, vaping, and marijuana, compared to boys and young men, and even compared to those who identify as genderqueer or unsure. And at a previous presentation, I was asked, well, is that just because girls are more honest about reporting the data? And I think it's a good question, and I think that Communities That Care ground truths their data with local youth, and they have not kind of heard any contradiction to that. And they do other things to try to tell, like they actually ask, like, how honest are you being in this survey? So, this is the best available data we have, and I think it's definitely important to be aware of it. But the trend line over time is going in a positive direction. It's the disparities that are concerning. And then particularly lifetime use, there's much higher usage reported among, in addition to girls, gender diverse folks, LGBTQ folks, those with lower socioeconomic status. Yeah, important to think about those disparities. So in our qualitative data collection, our focus groups and interviews, what really came through was there's inadequate transgender care, especially in rural areas, that women who have experienced trauma are re-traumatized by systems and bureaucracies. Native women and girls do not have access to culturally responsive care. There's only one Indian health service in the whole state, which is in the eastern part of the state, and that's kind of the trusted go-to source for health care. So there's nothing culturally appropriate in Western Mass. And that immigrants continue to have limited access to health care depending on their status, their legal status, and so forth. And then one last thing I want to mention, which was kind of a late arriving piece of data on health and well-being, is that we were excited to, on the good news side, to report that Massachusetts is ranked 4th of all states in maternal health. So it has one of the lowest rates of maternal mortality and also infant mortality. However, The state has been studying complications of labor and delivery, so they call that severe maternal morbidity, and that has actually grown over the last decade. It almost doubled between 2011 and 2020 statewide. We don't have local data for that. And the rates of these complications of labor and delivery were double for Black women and other birthing people compared to white. So again, we don't know what that looks like at the local level, but important to flag. So there's a couple of pieces of data related to reproductive justice where we just have 2016 and 2020 data, and 2020 was during COVID. So we're going to be watching to see what changes after 2020. I just want to acknowledge that. So for example, adequate prenatal care went down in Franklin County and regionally. So 88% of pregnant people had adequate prenatal care in 2016, and only 81% had that in 2020. But again, that was during COVID. So we need to keep an eye on that, and also acknowledge that those with public insurance don't tend to have as good prenatal care as those with private insurance. And then similarly, I don't have a chart for it, but in terms of teen birth rates, it says Berkshire County, which is true. It did go down 50%. It also went down 50% in Franklin County, so I apologize for not switching that out. But perhaps not surprising that teen birth rates went down so dramatically between 2016 and 2020 because of COVID. So we'll have to see whether those trends continue. And wanted to just flag, especially now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned, that crisis pregnancy centers do exist in our community. In fact, there's one in Greenfield, and they don't always they don't provide full service medical services, and they counsel people in ways that can be misleading. So there's opportunities to regulate those centers and make sure that we're providing reproductive care as expansively as we can. So we look at in terms of violence and safety, we look at a lot of different aspects of violence and safety. Obviously, sexual and domestic violence, youth safety, bullying, youth dating violence, police contact and incarceration. And these quotes, again, speak to some of what we heard from the focus groups and interviews. We have to make the community safe, and all those systems, the police, the courts, every single system has to be working to keep that survivor and her family and her children safe so they don't have to flee and go to a brand new place to live unless they want to. We aren't there. We are not there. And I just have to reiterate, of all the focus groups we did, the one we did with service providers working with domestic violence survivors was really like heartbreaking. I mean, it was just such a sense of treading water and not being able to, not having systems support and resources support women to be safe and to thrive. And then we did a focus group with folks identified as trans and gender diverse. And one person said, I don't feel safe where I can't find people of the same gender as me. So just that sense of safety is not there for a lot of people in our community. So for domestic violence, we know that COVID created a real crisis. People were trapped. They couldn't get to some place safe. And so, the rates of reported violence increased, like Jane Doe, Inc., which is a statewide member organization. The increase was 84% in requests for services during COVID. And then we looked at discipline rates in the schools, and we definitely saw that although male students are disciplined at much higher rates than female students, that among female students, Indigenous, Black, and Latina girls were disciplined at much higher rates relative to their enrollment. So we believe that that's a sign of inequities in how discipline is being administered. And then, similar to domestic violence, we also saw a sharp increase in teen sexual and dating violence since 2019 statewide, and the Communities That Care new data shows in particular, LGBTQ students reporting much higher rates above average of sexual and physical violence. And we also, just in terms of opportunities for action, need to rebuild the trust in reporting so that we know that we're getting really accurate data, as well as doing so much to better support folks who experience violence. So we're going to just talk a little bit about leadership and political participation, and then we'll be done. So it's very hard to get data on leadership. There's not a really systematic way that gender data or sex data is collected. But the Women's Power Gap is a great organization that does collect data, some data statewide. And so this is looking at leadership at Massachusetts' largest public companies in 2023. So the gender gap is still huge. Female CEOs actually doubled since 2019. So they were 4% of CEOs and now they're 8%, woohoo! And actually the percentage of women of color CEOs went from 0 to 4%. So actually it was the growth in women of color CEOs that completely accounted for the growth. So it's kind of like a good news, but still not so good news story. And then when you look at the next tier below CEOs, you'll see we still are not at parity, 29%, but then you have to wonder what's going on between those two tiers and why are more women not making it up and more women of color making it up to that top tier. So still a lot to do. There's basically no data on trans and gender diverse leadership in the state or locally, and when we interviewed and did focus groups with trans and gender diverse folks, they basically said, yeah, we don't see it anywhere, and it really would mean a lot if we could see more folks like us represented in leadership in all different facets of society. And one person even talked about media representation and how having journalists who have lived experience and who represent these identities could tell better stories about what's going on. We also looked at STEM jobs, and not surprisingly, female employees are still underrepresented in Western Mass STEM jobs, and there's definitely racial and ethnic disparities there. So we really need a lot more better reporting of demographics of the staff and boards of nonprofits, corporations, and so forth, and definitely strengthen. There's a lot of great STEM programs out there, but we can still do more to strengthen those. And then finally, political participation is a good news story to some extent. So right now, 5/6 of the top state leadership positions are filled by women. Yay! Our governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. Interestingly, in Western Mass, we have strong representation of female police chiefs. So that's what this map is showing. So there's more female police chiefs in our region than the rest of the state has. And then also, 5 of the 11 mayors in Western Mass are women. Unfortunately, none are women of color. And then in other areas like sheriffs, DAs, judges, and chief justices, we're not in a good place yet with making progress there. And then finally, 37% of the Western Mass legislative delegation, that's the delegation to the State House, are women. And only 1 is a woman of color, but yay that there now is a woman of color. Representative Arriaga from Chicopee. As I was saying, there's behind every statistic is a person or people, and she was at our presentation in Hampden County, and it's like, there it is, there's the person behind the number. We definitely have more we can do, but we're making strides in that area as well. So that was a huge data dump. Again, I hope you'll sit with some of the either the shorter report, or if you're feeling eager to dive deeper, the longer report, and just take time with it and think about, again, what your spheres of influence are and how you can do something with this data. I know that many of you in the room already, that's part of your job, is to do something with this data, so, or with other data that you collect. So again, I know that was a lot of information, but if anyone does have questions or just wants to react to what you heard, happy to entertain questions and comments.
I think there might be another mic. I actually have a comment. I want to first thank the Women's Fund and Donna for continuing to do this research. It was in my time that we did the very first report, and at that time we had one person that we could hire, and she came in and just dug through anything she could get her hands on. And I remember when it was written about in the Republican, some of the comments that were made under the anonymity of the web were absolutely terrible and heartbreaking at the same time. So I really want to thank the Women's Fund and Donna for keeping at this, because the more information we have, the more we can act, because it's very easy for people to say, oh, that's fake news, as we know. And the other thing I would like to challenge all of us to do, I've been getting an idea as I'm sitting here about succession, you know, and I've heard how people on county boards, city committees and everything are really worried about people not volunteering or coming forward. I'd love to see how we can bring all of those groups together to start talking to one another through the leadership of the Women's Fund and what you're already doing on how we can start building those pipelines. So thank you very, very much. This was very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all this really, really valuable information. I really especially loved hearing the difference, you know, how you categorize things, meaningful data, accessible data, and actionable data. That's really neat. I have to think about that more for our survey. This may not be I don't know if this is a question or a request or a thought, but as I was looking at the data on parity and leadership, which I found really, really interesting, I know I've heard things over the years about some of the many benefits of having more women in leadership positions in corporations, in government, and so on. I mean, obviously there's the benefit of equity, but beyond that, in terms of social responsibility and responsiveness and so on. And I'm curious if this report links to any of that research, or if there could be some way to, you know, to follow it up so that it becomes a little bit more actionable. Isn't exactly the word I'm looking for, but a little bit more like reasons to action on it.
Yeah, great thought. Thank you.
Thank you. This was really, really interesting and maddening. And I'm also thinking about succession. I have a teenage daughter who wants to grow up to become, hopefully not the first female president. And I'm looking around the room and feeling like, gosh, I'm middle-aged and I might be one of the younger people here. And you've got this great young women's program that you're doing in Franklin County, and here we are in Franklin County, and where are the young women? So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what you're doing to get this information out to younger people, and you know, not just us old folks who already, like, we've been around the block long enough to know, man, the situation is dire. It's great to have the data to back that up, but I already know I'm angry about the state of, you know, of women's rights and women in leadership or women not in leadership. I've been angry for the last, you know, 40 years. What can we do to convince? What can you do to get this data out to young people so they understand that it is also their fight and they can join you in it?
That's a great point, and I'm happy to take a quick crack at it and then defer to Donna. I know that some of the organizations who collect this data very much use it to engage youth in action, such as Communities That Care Coalition, the Youth Mental Health Coalition in Springfield, Young Women's Initiative, I know, looks at data and then uses it to inform grant making, and they actually have their own pot they do for grant making. But I think it's a great point and a great challenge to us to think more about how to make sure this is accessible and engage folks in conversation around that.
And I'll just add to that Heather from MCSM, who must have had to leave, they're going to be our partner with our Young Women's Initiative, and one of the main objectives of that Young Women's Initiative is to center the needs of young folks, and so sharing this data with them will be a critical part of the program, because that's how they're going to decide what it is that they want to tackle. And in terms of the grant making that Amihan talked about, we're going to give them a pool of $25,000 so they can decide, they're not just beneficiaries, but they're benefactors by doing that, and, the power of philanthropy as a tool of social justice. Also, I convene a group of women heads of nonprofits once a month, so this information, the research is shared with them, so we hope that they will share it with their communities. And we also have a Women and Girls Serving nonprofit newsletter that goes out once a month, and this research is there. Again, in the hopes that our nonprofit partners in the communities will get this information, use it for their own purposes for grant making, but also to share that with the communities they serve. So great question, thank you.
Hi, thank you for this. Thank you to anybody else who is not in this room who participated in the research, including all the participants. Yes, I feel the same sort of it's kind of a punch in the gut to actually see it. We all know the realities, but I wondered, just thinking in terms of that flow from data to information to in that meaning-making process where we go from just having the numbers to actually making meaning of it and then making it into shared knowledge and shared wisdom. Beyond disseminating just the data, which is important, are there places or groups or any people who convene meaning-making sessions? Because I feel like that's such an important part of understanding how, even what the data, what that looks like. That it's going to mean different things to different people, and data is never just unbiased, raw life, right? It's put together in specific ways and for a purpose. So I have just moved here in late 2019, so I'm continue to be still new to the community, but are there places that do that, or is there opportunities for that?
One of the things that we were hoping would come out of these convenings is that it would not just be us telling everyone what the data was, but also to hear from the community. And I know that I think, Carla, and even in your time, there were a lot of these kinds of meetings as well. So also our staff, Sarah and Amihan, have gone out to a Zonta meeting. So we'll go to community and have conversations and present, maybe a shorter version of this with them. It's just a matter of who and when and where. That we would be happy to do that. We also have a program virtually called Wait What that we're going to bring back in the spring, and that could also be a banner under which we do maybe a virtual one of those, hoping that people have kind of looked at the data a little bit before coming so that we can have a conversation about what does this mean and opportunities for action. One of the things I love about what the Public Health Institute did in terms of listening to what we wanted was to really frame the key findings report in terms of positive change, opportunities to do more, and then opportunities for action. Because sometimes these kinds of reports can be so depressing and overwhelming that you don't feel this is hopeless. So they've framed it in a way so that we can see where progress has been made, where we still need to do more, and also what are things that we, as the reader of these reports, maybe not experts, maybe having nothing to do with nonprofits or women and girls, but what could we do, maybe calling our local senator or representative and so forth. So that's also something that hopefully will help people, maybe not give them meaning so much as give them an opportunity for action.
Yeah, and I would just add, we could talk with Donna and her team about this, but the Women's Fund is already convening a lot of different stakeholders in different configurations, and so maybe there's an opportunity also to have like inclusive spaces there to make meaning of the data and help people think about how to act. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, the whole concept of making meaning. And yeah, I think we're very open to coming to spaces where people want to do that, in addition to the spaces where the Women's Fund is already convening. So.
I just wanted to thank you for a great presentation, and I really appreciate the addition of adding transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse individuals as part of this, because, you know, equity, you know, I feel like it's such a big part of what equity means. And so my question relates to, I know that research is limited based on just, it's really difficult because of the gender binary that exists in research. And so moving forward, what do you feel like, as far as what your work and research partners and what that looks like, how you can include the greater gender diverse population in research so they are more represented in future reports of this nature?
Just say, from the perspective of the Public Health Institute, you know, we do trainings for all different kinds of, you know, public and nonprofit agencies on equity and data collection, and how you even set up the data collection tools when you're collecting data from individuals, from clients or patients, and how you ask them for the data, you know, and making sure that it's inclusive and that people have a way to say what their identity is and have that reflected in these, you know, check boxes. So we are definitely very committed to trying to get better data collection, and then also expanding our qualitative data collection, so hearing more from folks who are not well represented in the you know, the census data and the other quantitative data sources. So I was really excited to have this opportunity, and I hope it's just, you know, a springboard to do more of that and to really advocate with other funders and other folks who hire us to do research that this should be part of what they're paying for, is to get a better understanding, a better picture. So I appreciate you, you know, urging us on with that.
Yeah, and I will just add that at some of these other events that we had, in fact, in Springfield, we had 4 of our legislators in attendance. We did invite your representatives and senators from Franklin County, but they're not here, and they have a good excuse because they're in Boston representing you. But this is another opportunity for action to ask that data at the statewide level is collected in rather, you know, beyond the binary, right? So that's another opportunity for action.
Okay, I already went though. Okay, I just wanted to share sort of from our student health survey data here in Franklin County, that one of the biggest disparities we're seeing, which we saw in here, and probably is more in the longer report, but is the mental health disparity for girls is really significant, and even greater so for non-binary, transgender youth. And that's been growing since 2012. That disparity has been growing really, really starkly. And I feel pretty strongly like social media is a significant driver of that. You know, the number of hours that young people are spending on social media online, girls and boys are using, and now I'm just using girls and boys, but are using social media and using phones and internet very differently from each other. And this is something that I think is really actionable, that we really need to do more about. And Senator Ed Markey is sponsoring the COPA 2.0 Act right now, which is a start. It's not a huge solution, but I think we really have to be looking at policy solutions around social media in terms of girls' mental health in particular.
Yeah, and while you're walking the mic over, I just want to thank you so much for bringing that up, because I had in my notes and then just didn't get to that level of detail that, yeah, there's really great data in the Communities That Care Coalition, and it just shows you that, you know, maybe the first hour on social media or on your phone, there might be some benefit because you're connecting with others, But then as the hours go on, the numbers just go down in terms of the benefit to your mental health. And
I'm here representing me. And I can relate so much because I'm a single mother. And I've struggled with so many of the issues that you're all talking about. I'm that person that's part of your survey. And I have had a lot of experience with financial abuse and how it relates to domestic abuse. But the component that seems to be missing in a lot of our understanding of that is the way that the gender wage gap impacts both of these things and how they intersect. And that's what I'm kind of working on kind of my own, and I'm trying to learn how to, we can open up all the domestic shelters in the world, but that's closing the barn door. That's healing women or helping women after they've already been through these very, very traumatic experiences that it takes them so much time to recover from. And I speak from experience because it took me 12 years. I feel that the thing that young girls are missing is that education to know the warning signs that, you know, if they go into a job and they're not getting the respect and the pay that's equitable to their, you know, to their colleagues, what to look for, but also financial literacy has to be a big part of this. And I also happen to have boy-girl twins. And I get outraged thinking that my son has a better chance in life because he has a penis. You know, it's so unfair to my daughter, who is just as brilliant, just as articulate, has just as many skills and the education that he has, but there are so many opportunities that are presented to him that she doesn't have. And I've seen it from the time they were like infants, whether it's programming or, you know, the canon of literature that are basically written by white old men from Europe. So there are all these things, but what I'm asking you guys is there a component of what you're doing that looks at the intersection of those things that could possibly deal with preventative measures and education to give young women a way to avoid falling into the traps that someone like myself fell into? I used to make a 6-figure income and I've ended up in poverty. And that's hard to admit, but I'd rather admit it and tell you what my experience is and have somebody else avoid the pitfalls. So I would love to see some component of what you're doing address those issues, because I think it could mitigate some of the problems of poverty that women experience. You know, like if they knew what the warning signs were, if they saw the red flags in advance, that financial literacy component, I think, could be such a powerful message for the girls that you're talking about that make those decisions.
Thank you, and thank you for your vulnerability in sharing your story. One of the major things that we do is move funding to organizations in the community. You might recall Amihan had the slide up where we gave almost $330,000 away last year. And so our grants committee uses a lens around economic security, around leadership, and so forth. And I think one of the things that when you were sharing, I was thinking of is we have an economic security hub work that we're doing in Springfield, and we created a schematic of 12 different things that interconnect to make up what we call one woman's economic engine. And they are things like financial literacy, you know, there's a component of that, there's a component around jobs, housing, transportation, childcare, identification. and so forth. And so I think it would benefit our grants committee to have that lens when they're looking at grants as well. So thank you for that suggestion.
Well, before we wrap up our segment, just to do a plug for the Women's Fund Data Hub. So there is a data hub that has a lot more data than, and it's organized in a very easy to follow way, nicely laid out. So the URL is not listed here, but it's data.mywomensfund.org. So,
and we will send a link to that and the reports to all of you who we have your email address. So if we don't have your email address, make sure to stop at the table on your way out. But at this time, I'd also like to invite up Sarah Munson, who you saw her picture at the start of the presentation. She's our Senior Director of Philanthropy, and she's going to bring it all home so you all can get back to the cookies and refreshments in the back. Sarah?
Before I go on, I just want to really thank Lisa Rangelli. This is our 5th presentation in like 6 weeks. So I have so much gratitude for her for taking the time, for not only making this easy for all of us to understand, but really taking the time to outfit it and highlight each county and what that data means for them. So thank you, Lisa. This gender equity research is really the foundation of the work that we do at the Women's Fund. Donna talked a little bit about that lens. That lens really does determine our grant-making cycles and how we move that money back into the community. And we will also be using this data for our strategic planning next year. So we are grateful to everyone who participated in various ways to make that happen. The data shows that on average, women's funds move money into the communities 9 months faster than traditional philanthropic means. So, yes, woo. So if you're inspired to support our work, you can give at mywomensfund.org. You can scan the beautiful QR code above. You can reach out to me directly. But I really just want to thank Greenfield Savings Bank for sponsoring tonight's event and thank all of you for coming out in the cold to be here with us. We are really humbled for not only your time, but your engagement in the conversation. Thank you.